Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on two absolutely critical years, 1935 and 1936. This is the moment when the fragile peace built after World War I didn't just bend, it was deliberately taken apart, piece by piece. We're going to see how a series of audacious gambles and, frankly, disastrous responses set the world on a collision course for war. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the initial provocations. Hitler testing the waters to see what he could get away with. Then we'll watch as the entire system of international security just completely crumbles under the pressure. And finally, we'll see how the world starts choosing sides, lining up for a fight that was fast becoming inevitable. All right, let's dive right into part one. By 1935, Adolf Hitler's got a stranglehold on power in Germany. Now, he never made a secret of how much he hated the Treaty of Versailles, but what nobody really knew was just how quickly and how aggressively he was willing to tear it all down. So he starts, systematically, almost like a checklist, dismantling the treaty, all while keeping a very close eye on how the world was going to react. And the speed of it was just astonishing. In January, he gets a huge propaganda win when the Saarland region votes to rejoin Germany. Then just 2 months later, in March, boom, he announces he's creating an air force, the Luftwaffe, a massive violation of the treaty. 2 weeks after that, boom, another one. He's bringing back the draft, aiming for an army of 500,000 men. By June, a brand new U-boat slides into the water. We're talking 4 major violations in less than 6 months. He was on a roll. So all of this frantic activity finally gets a reaction. The leaders of Britain, France, and Italy all get together and form what they called the Streza Front. The goal was pretty simple: present a united front and tell Hitler, hey, no more. For a brief moment, it really looked like the major powers were drawing a line in the sand, getting ready to contain him together. Well, that united front, it lasted all of 2 months. The British, you see, were really worried about their own navy. They were getting nervous about a potential two-front naval race against both Germany and Japan. So, in a pretty stunning move, they just went behind everyone's back and cut their own side deal with Germany. They basically gave Hitler the green light to build up his navy as long as he promised to keep it smaller than theirs. The promise of the Streza Front was unity, but the reality, it was every nation for itself. The French were, to put it mildly, furious. Their prime minister called it a flat-out betrayal. But the guy whose reaction really mattered was Italy's Benito Mussolini. He watched this whole thing play out, and he learned a very simple and very dangerous lesson. His so-called allies were weak and unreliable, and the only thing anyone respected was action. Okay, let's move into our next section, because this is where that disunity leads to a total meltdown of international law. This idea of collective security, the whole all for one for all thing, where nations band together to stop an aggressor. Well, it was about to face a test it would not survive. So, seeing this weakness, Mussolini decides it's his turn to roll the dice. In October of 1935, he launches a full-scale invasion of Ethiopia, an independent African country. And his gamble was this: the League of Nations would talk a big game, they'd protest, they'd condemn, but they wouldn't actually have the guts to do anything to really stop him. And this chart just shows the problem perfectly. The League actually did something. For the first time ever, they slapped economic sanctions on a country. But the sanctions were a complete joke. Look at this. Major players like the US, Germany, and Japan, they weren't even members, so they just ignored them. But the real killer was what they left out. The one resource that could have literally stopped Italy's war machine cold, oil, that wasn't included. The sanctions were toothless, and the League looked totally pathetic. Meanwhile, back in Germany, Hitler is watching all this with a huge grin on his face. The Streza Front is dead. The League of Nations is a laughingstock. He decides the time is perfect for his biggest, most dangerous gamble yet, a move that could have kicked off World War II 3 years early. So, on March 7th, 1936, he does it. He orders German soldiers to march into the Rhineland. Now, technically, this was German land, but it was a completely demilitarized buffer zone, put there specifically to keep France safe. Sending troops in was a direct threat, a huge provocation. And here's the thing, at that moment, the German army was tiny, absolutely tiny, compared to the French army. It was a massive bluff, and the entire world held its breath to see if France would call it. They blinked. And this quote, oh man, it just perfectly captures the mood, especially in Britain. So many people just didn't see the danger. They thought, well, it's their own country, what's the big deal? They completely missed the massive strategic shift that was happening right under their noses. And you cannot overstate this. It was 100% a bluff. Hitler himself admitted later that if the French army had made a single move towards them, his troops would have had to retreat with their tails between their legs. But the Allies did nothing. And in that one moment, Hitler became a hero at home, and he learned the most important lesson of his life. Be bold, be aggressive, and the democracies will back down. And that brings us to our final part. Because with the old system of collective security completely in the trash, the world starts to reorganize. It's like everyone on the playground knows a big fight is coming, and they start picking teams. The lines that would define World War II were being drawn. Well, we got a terrifying answer to that question in July 1936, when the Spanish Civil War broke out. What started as an internal Spanish conflict quickly became something much, much bigger. It became a dress rehearsal for the next World War. It was a live fire testing ground for the ideologies and the weapons of Europe's great powers. And you can see the sides pretty clearly right here. You've got the Republicans, who are being backed by the Soviet Union, and then on the other side, the nationalists, getting huge support from fascist Italy and Nazi Germany. Hitler saw this as the perfect opportunity. He sent his brand new Air Force, the infamous Condor Legion, to Spain to practice its terrifying new tactic, bombing cities to dust. And check out this incredible split screen. While his pilots are terrorizing Spain, Germany is putting on its best face for the rest of the world. In August of '36, Berlin hosts the Summer Olympics. It was a massive propaganda show designed to portray a peaceful, modern, welcoming Germany. But in that exact same month, behind closed doors, Hitler issues a secret order for something called the Four-Year Plan, a plan to get Germany's entire economy ready for a massive war of conquest by 1940. By the end of the year, the diplomatic map of Europe was completely redrawn. On November 1st, Mussolini gets up and announces a new alliance with Germany, calling it the Rome-Berlin Axis. Just think about that. Italy, the same country that a year earlier stood with Britain and France against Germany, was now Hitler's #1 ally. So you're probably wondering, where was the United States during all of this? The world's biggest industrial power? Well, this number, 95%. That's the percentage of Americans who told pollsters in 1936 that they wanted absolutely nothing to do with any future foreign war. And this wasn't just a feeling, it was the law. Still haunted by World War I, America passed a series of neutrality acts. These laws basically made it illegal to sell weapons or loan money to any country at war. It didn't matter if you were the good guy or the bad guy. So in effect, the world's most powerful nation had legally tied its own hands and taken a seat in the bleachers. And that just leaves us with a final, chilling question. In just 2 short years, the world order wasn't just cracked, it was completely shattered. The aggressors learned that if you're bold enough, no one will stop you. The democracies learned that it's just easier to look the other way. The path to war wasn't just open, it was being paved, and the world was starting to run down it.